3 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
To infinity and beyond.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
Oh, America, no Gelb once again today. It is Gresh with you here, taking you until 6 o'clock in the East. Boy, do we got a lot to pour through today at 855-212-4227. You can also watch me do this show from my incredibly ostentatious estate, where I'm broadcasting from a secret bunker and location. For those of you who would be watching us on YouTube, you get to see my rubber room at the Puzzle Factory. I got my nice padded walls so that I can punch them or just yell whenever I need to. And, trying to figure out who is going to be the number one pick in the NFL draft turned a little wonky yesterday when Abdul Carter and his agents, the Rosenhauses, basically announced that there's a little bit of a foot issue with the potential number one pick in the draft, and maybe he's going to have surgery. So yesterday, I don't want to say the football world came to a stop. I don't want to go that far, but because it really has been Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter for the number one pick in the draft, I think for a lot of people it was easy to kind of hunker down when hearing that Carter has a stress reaction in his right foot. So it did come out today. The doctors advised against Carter having any surgery, right? But this is just really interesting to me because there is a battle for the number one pick, and both Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter have said it's important for them to be number one in their own ways. And Travis Hunter ended up saying it today, because he spoke, he kind of separated these two guys and got them out of the way. Let Carter do his thing. Let Hunter do his thing today. And the thing that really caught me off guard, folks, was I was among the many who was praising Abdul Carter for coming out and speaking confidently about himself, talking about how he is the number one pick. It's just really interesting that we hear this injury news after Abdul Carter said this yesterday at the Combine.
How realistic do you feel like it is to go number one this year?
I feel like it's very realistic, and I feel like I'm the best player in the country, and the best player should be selected number one.
Boy, oh boy. Now that is a full-throated, confident man standing up in front of everyone and saying, yeah, I'm the number one pick, and, hey, the best player should be the one to go number one. Now, I know that Abdul Carter is smart enough to know that it doesn't work that way because it's always about team needs. You never know who's going to trade up there. You don't know if somebody's going to get horny and overreact and jump up all the way to number one and draft a quarterback. You really don't know. We've seen numerous times where the presumptive best player in the draft is not the guy that is drafted number one overall in any year of the NFL draft. But Abdul Carter, I think, kind of understood what he was doing yesterday. I do think that in looking at it, it wasn't as coincidental as I originally thought, but I did think it was odd that he stood up there and said this, and there's no way that Abdul Carter didn't go to the Combine at least generally aware of this situation. Now, you get an NFL doctor, and they start poking and prodding you and feeling you and all that kind of stuff. Maybe it sort of took it to the next level in terms of what the NFL thought about it. They were maybe taking it a little more seriously than Abdul Carter was. But anytime there's also the Rosenhauses involved, I always think that if there could be skullduggery, it would be afoot. Or that if there would be a PR campaign, then it would come from a client that is represented by the Rosenhauses. And for as much as they do a great job of getting their guys paid, and then in some instances getting them paid, and then the team the next year says, why don't you go out and look for a trade, see Devon Godshaw, the New England Patriots. But normally if there would be a PR campaign or some kind of twist of reason behind the scenes, that to me it would be a Rosenhaus client, because they are ruthless, they drive the hard bargain, and they really have no mercy, the Rosenhauses, when it comes to doing business with these teams, because it is their job to represent the player. So now Abdul Carter has come out and said, hey, I'm going to do my pro day. I'll meet with people here. We'll see what happens at the pro day in terms of the measurables for a guy like Abdul Carter. But I got to say, what this whole situation did for me was confirm that Travis Hunter is and should be the number one pick in this NFL draft. Now, again, I don't know if Tennessee is going to start to... Here's what I would do if I were Tennessee, quite honestly. I'd start hyping up Cam Ward. because you're trying to create a market, right? Unless Tennessee has looked at it and said, no, we want one of either Hunter or Carter, and we're going to stay there, and we're going to take one of those guys, then for them the decision is really easy. You're already down to 2 with what you're going to do with your most important pick, right? But why not try to create a little bit of a false market? I'm Gresh in for Gelb here on the Infinity Sports Network, 855-212-4227. So let's jump from Abdul Carter and just think about this for a second, y'all. If you're the Tennessee Titans, what's best for business for you? Well, it'd be great to get a bona fide superstar because you do have a stadium that is being built, and ultimately, you know, the sales force and the sales teams of the Tennessee Titans are going to have to turn around and go sell that ish, let's say. They got to go sell the suites. They got to go sell the club seats. They got to go sell sponsorships. And it would be a lot easier to do it if you had Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter. But what's really best for the Tennessee Titans as a football team? Because even though this feels like an injury, non-injury with Abdul Carter, if you're Tennessee, don't you have to stop and pause for a moment? It's a big guy where you want a great pass rusher. You need that push off. And now there's at least a tiny bit of doubt as to whether that guy is going to stay healthy. And for as skinny as Travis Hunter is, especially playing both sides of the ball, for as much as that guy still has just so much room to grow body-wise and putting on weight, the thing about Abdul Carter is you know he's got to have that push-off. And with Hunter, he's played a ton of snaps, and he's been pretty injury-free. And I don't think it's going to sour Tennessee on Abdul Carter, but it's at least now a part of the discussion in the building. Is this something we're really going to have to worry about? Now, the Rosenhauses have come out and said, you know, I'm 100% certainty that everything is going to be okay, and of course you would. But if you're Tennessee, do you now have to pivot and go to a little bit of a propaganda campaign? Because if you can get the New York Football Giants to blink and give you something to move up to number 1 and you slide down to number 3, you're still getting one of the 2 guys that you're already having internal discussions about right now. It just feels like it would be logical to do so. It feels like this would be something that Tennessee would, I would think, be very willing to be a part of, be very willing to be able to try to drive a bargain for the number 1 pick. And even if the Giants only jumped up a couple of spots, could you end up getting there, I don't know, maybe a second rounder this year and then some middle round compensation next year? Because the Giants could also look at Tennessee and say, hey, listen, you ain't taking a quarterback. And depending on what Cleveland does, it could end up being 50-50 as to whether they're going to jump and take Cam Ward. So if you are the Giants, you might be able to say, hey, listen, I'm not giving up, half of my draft to move up 2 spots. I can be patient and wait, and good players are still going to fall to me. But are there going to be other teams that fall in love with Cam Ward? And that's another reason why, if you're the Tennessee Titans, you start trying to create that sort of false market. Go to a Starbucks where a bunch of beat guys could be fighting. We'll get to that in a moment. And let it be seen that, the new GM of Tennessee is talking to the Joe Shane from the Giants, or maybe talking to Tom Brady from the Raiders or something like that. Now that'd be a bigger jump. That'd be a massive commitment if the Raiders wanted to jump all the way up there. They do have some extra middle round currency that they could flip to be able to make that happen. But you understand the point. I think, for me anyway, going in, I had 2 guys at the top of the draft. Now with Abdul Carter, you get a reason to at least think or blink. And maybe you just land on Hunter and you say, fine, Carter can go somewhere else. We know he's going to be a really good player. We don't want to assume the risk. Then again, maybe you can get people horny for a quarterback and someone wanting to jump in there at number one. I am Gresh in for Zach Gelb on the Infinity Sports Network, 855-212-4227. You want to get me on social media? I am everywhere. YouTube, X, Insta, Tick in the Talk, at The Real Gresh, Gresh. I'm going to pull Mike and Stu in on this one because these guys have been around the game for a little bit and have probably dealt with some of these NFL insiders along the way. But for those in America who missed it, there was a bit of a beat guy kerfluffle out in Indianapolis over the reporting of the Tom Brady, Matt Stafford story, right? So we had talked about that story yesterday where it was Ian Rappaport who was saying that, no, those guys just kind of bumped into each other and Brady and Stafford had a very pleasant, cursory conversation and maybe left the door open. They made it sound like it was much more coincidental of these two guys bumping into each other, whereas Jordan Schultz of Fox was like, no, basically Brady hosted Stafford on a recruiting trip at his house. So apparently these two guys are about to, get themselves the full-lined half-calf, decaf parfait that's a Grand Eventa mocha with a twisty thing or something like that. As you can tell, I don't go to Starbucks. I'm also not someone who pays $3 for coffee. I make it myself, but nevertheless. So apparently, Jordan Schultz's by the way, boys, did you guys know that Jordan Schultz's dad started Starbucks?
Yeah, I did. I've had him on the show a few times, and it has been part of his lexicon. But it is one heck of a story to have.
That is unbelievable. I didn't know that his old man started Starbucks, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, why are you doing what you're doing then? You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to say that people shouldn't have ambition or whatever, but good grief, that's billions of dollars there. You'd think that if he wanted to go buy a place in Bermuda and just go play golf every day of his life, they'd be able to do so. So for anybody who has ever met Ian Rappaport, and I know that Mike and Stu are not the tallest guys in the world, so I don't want to sound disrespectful to people that are under, say, 5'9". However,
under 5'9". Oh man, I'm screwed.
However, if you've ever met Louis and Rappaport, you would say he's like Costanza. He's got to put on the Timberlands to be able to heighten a little bit. Now, I've never met Jordan Schultz in person. Now, I am also like 6'5", and I'm a statuesque figure. So, but like to think that here they are waiting for their drinks, probably with their name misspelled, and they're standing there beefing. And like if I were in line, I'd be looking over and I'd be like, wow, why is that nerd picking on that little guy? And I don't want to be disrespectful, but it's just the whole, I'm trying to imagine these two nerdy sports writers that are beefing it out over something over Tom Brady. And meanwhile, you have like a mild-mannered nanny who is getting her caffeine fix before she goes to watch the local rich kids for 4 hours or something like that. It just tickles me to think that like Jordan Schultz is standing there with his palm out on Ian Rappaport's head and he's just leaning in trying to hit him and stuff like that. Like it's a Three Stooges routine. I mean, what are we doing here? Are the scoops that important? Like, did anybody go to bed last night saying, wow, that controversy on the reporting of Brady talking to Stafford, holy heck. It's like following politics. I better jump up and follow along. No. Instead, it's just a couple of little nerds fighting at the counter. I can't believe in an era where we have video everywhere that no one got video of these two yelling at each other near a Starbucks. Oh, my goodness. I don't know why it tickles me so much. 855-212-4227. Coming up, I love Travis Hunter as the presumptive number one pick in the draft. And I mentioned that Tennessee needs to start hyping up Cam Ward. But when you hear Travis Hunter, I don't know how you don't get hooked on this guy. I'll get to it next. I'm Gresh, and for Gelb, it's the Infinity Sports Network.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining.
General managers, and I bet you people like Boomer Esiason and people can talk to this as well, right? You were trying to figure out when you drafted a kid what they were going to do with money. Now with NIL, it's not as big a deal. I think there's kind of a sort of a misconception out there that a lot of these kids are all making big-time bucks, whether it's at Penn State or Ohio State or something like that. And yes, we hear about Ohio State spending, $20 million in NIL in their roster. And I was listening to Matt Rule, Nebraska. He's like, now we're starting to spend real money. We're getting up there. And it's an arms race of everybody spending money on their roster. But not every kid coming into this draft is famous. And not every kid coming into this draft has had millions of dollars in NIL money. Now, Travis Hunter is a little different, but that is also the reason to make the case for this kid. Because the point was made that when you think about the amount of snaps the kid was playing at Colorado, we're talking somewhere between, I'll widen the window, Travis Hunter would play between like 100 and 120 snaps a game. You figure 60 on each side of the ball, right? About that. Which meant double the work, double the film study, double the position meetings. There was a lot of extra work that Travis Hunter had to put in. Now, one could probably argue that the corner, Travis Hunter, probably had it pretty not easy, but understood the scheme, understood the defense. And a lot of times when you have a player that talented, you just say, hey, you go cover that guy, and we'll worry about the other 10. But it's the wide receiver part of it where there had to be position meetings. There had to be understanding coverage. There had to be understanding where you're going to fit if there's a motion or a shift and things like that. And when you think about a kid like Travis Hunter, where he is going to be, maybe next to Deion, the most famous person on campus. He'd be the most famous person on campus that you'd be able to walk by in the quad, sit by in class, maybe see him in a mess hall or something. I don't know. He had a ton of distractions. Think back to when you were in college and the kind of distractions that would have deterred you from getting your work done. That didn't happen to Travis Hunter. He had fame, he had money, and he still won the Heisman Trophy. And he did it in a way that the only person that I can even remotely remember that did it to the extent that Travis Hunter did of playing both ways was probably going all the way back to Gordy Lockbaum at Holy Cross when people at that level could still be in it for the Heisman Trophy. Now, I'm sure there have been others, but I'm talking about like Heisman candidates. And Charles Woodson did play a little bit of offense, but it was really Charles Woodson, the corner, and being an elite return guy that won him the Heisman Trophy. And when I think about that at the NFL level, and when I think about how these teams at the NFL level are going to approach being around Travis Hunter this week, the kid is really ambitious. And he's also so put together. Here's a little snippet of Travis Hunter talking to the media today.
Did some meetings at receiver, did some meetings at DB, so still up in the air. They say nobody has ever done it for real the way I do it, but I tell them that I'm just different. I'm a different person.
He's already still trying to push the play on both sides, but he's not doing it in a dinkish way. He's not doing it in a disrespectful way. He's not doing it in a boastful way either. I think that's the other thing about Travis Hunter that gets me. The more that I listened to him today, the more that I realized that this guy, he gets it way more than I thought. I'm not a Deion Sanders fan. Deion the player, don't get me wrong. Deion the head coach, to me, is a goof, in my opinion. I don't think there's a lot of depth there. I think he is what kind of Bobby Bowden was at the end of his run in Florida State. It's much more a CEO of a program and then maybe making some in-game decisions and stuff. But do we think Deion Sanders is really sitting there grinding with the rest of the coaches, watching tape and coming up with game plans and things like that? I don't think so. But nevertheless, I kind of held it against Travis Hunter that he was like attached to Deion, and I've always loved his game. I worried about the personality, the person. All that's gone now. All that is gone with Travis Hunter. All you have to do is listen to him a little bit. I saw a thing of Travis Hunter talking to Laura Rutledge on ESPN, and just the little things, right? It makes eye contact with people. Like, think about it. How many young people have you met today where it's kind of like, well, they'll look you in the eye a little bit, and then they start looking away or get nervous, or it feels like they're kind of going squirrely on you. There's none of that with Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter is the kind of kid that if you are the Tennessee Titans, and I've brought up the business end of it, right? That you bring Travis Hunter into the Tennessee Titans and you walk that guy into FedEx, Coke, Pepsi, insert big company here, he's going to impress people. Not that Abdul Carter wouldn't, or not that there aren't other, but when you're talking about the pressure of potentially being the number one pick in the draft, the pressure of people, whatever market Travis Hunter goes to, fans are going to be thinking this guy can play both sides of the ball. And he is sort of elevating his own expectations because I think the kid wants the smoke. I think his challenge was not just, let me be the best player in college football. It's, can I go and do something that maybe no one in the NFL has ever done? And that's a different kind of challenge for someone coming into the league. 855-212-4227. I'm encouraging the Tennessee Titans to start pumping the tires of Cam Ward. And there was one other development in the top five that I just wanted to touch on quickly. And last year, whenever Bill Belichick left the building in New England, it was a ding-dong, which is dead mentality, right? Everybody started to come out. Well, you also started to have agents last year that were swarming in on the Patriots. Ooh, new general manager wants to keep the boss happy. The owner's in his feels a little bit. Hey, we might have a chance to make some dough here. And, Drew Rosenhaus swooped in, and they got a little 2-year extension done for Devon Godshaw. Now, Devon Godshaw is respectfully, a fat body. He's one of those kind of much more traditional nose tackle types who are, I think for a period of time, we sort of like thumbed our nose or looked crooked at the nose tackle. Now, I don't think that's happening anymore. But the Patriots are allowing Devon Godshaw to go out and kind of research a trade possibility and see if there's somewhere that they could send him. The reason I bring it up is because it's pretty evident that on a day where it is reported by The Athletic that the Patriots are not going to go after T. Higgins, franchised or not, I think Mason Graham is in play at number 4 for the Patriots. For as much as they need an offensive lineman, it feels like they might be able to get an offensive lineman in the second round. But if what I'm hearing out of that organization and my hunch is kind of right, they've got Christian Barmore on the way back. They've got a guy in Keon White that I think profiles as a kind of a perfect edge guy in what would be a Tyrell Williams, Mike Vrabel defense. You put another big body in there, they're looking for 4-down or 3-down D linemen is really what they're looking for. And that's where Mason Graham might end up fitting into to the Patriots somewhere if he's on the board at number 4. And that's something that I can believe that Graham would be on the board at number 4. I just didn't think New England might be interested, but there's also this like clandestine report. I think it was Adam Schefter yesterday when Trey Hendrickson came up. And Shefty said, yeah, there's at least one team that would break the bank for Trey Hendrickson. I wonder if that would be New England. Because if you've got Barmore and you already got Keon White and you draft Mason Graham, now you got 3 guys that you can win with. You put Trey Hendrickson there too? Now you have rebuilt your 3-down defensive line pretty quickly. And maybe instead of jumping in on the offense, they say, let's jump in on defense and then draft more young guys to develop on that other side of the ball. Coming up, into the NBA, did Detroit prove anything last night in beating Boston? And I would like to thank Paul George for finally caring about his job as much as the great Rich Ackerman does his. Let's get updated on everything in the world of sports. Here's my buddy Ack.
Infinity Sports Network, Sports Flash.
I was not a combine superstar. We'll start with a riddle sponsored by Progressive Insurance. What do your home and auto have in common? Progressive protects them both. It was an easy riddle. Learn more at Progressive.com. Not since Charles Woodson has there been a prospect like Travis Hunter, the Heisman Trophy winner, is capable of being an impact player on both sides of the ball. And while he has yet to choose on one position, he doesn't have to make that decision for now. He's just seeking a routine that works.
I just go in there and you look at every guy different. Every guy's not the same. Everybody have a unique style. So I try to find a unique style of what that guy has, and I try to lock and key in on it.
Penn State pass rusher Abdul will be able to take part in his pro day in a few weeks after doctors advised against surgery for the stress reaction in his foot discovered at the scouting combine. Trey Smith won't hit the open market. The Chiefs are using their franchise tag on the star guard and hoping to work out a long-term deal. For now, Smith will earn over $23 million next year. The Warriors have been sparked by the addition of Jimmy Butler. They're 6-1 since the big trade and have moved within a game of the Clippers for the final guaranteed playoff spot in the West. They go for their third straight win tonight in Orlando. I'm Rich Ackerman.
Hey, like us on Facebook. Our handle is INF Sportsnet. That's INF Sportsnet for our Facebook page. This is the Infinity Sports Network.
One minute, 30 seconds remaining. 1 minute remaining. Five seconds remaining. Seconds remaining. Seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Listening to the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network.
We're getting into a little NBA here. Gresh in for Gelb on Infinity Sports Network. It's part of the program sponsored by Hyundai. Hyundai helps protect you and your family on the road. We put your safety first and everything else second. Thank you to our great friends at Hyundai. Well, the Boston Celtics ended up losing, honestly, pretty handily to the Detroit Pistons last night. Celtics lose by 20 in this one. 117-97, I do believe, was the exact final. But the Celtics were riding a 6-game win streak going in, and the Pistons were riding a 7-game win streak going in. So, of course, they win their 8th in a row. They're now tied with the Cavaliers for the longest active win streak in the NBA. And for me, I was sitting around thinking, all right, how big is this for Detroit? Because, look, admittedly, I am a Celtics fan. I live in New England. I love me some Jason Tatum and all those guys, right? But I also know that as the defending world champions, I kind of lowered my regular season expectations a little bit for the Celtics. Not fall out of the number 1 spot, but it was much more about health for them. It was making sure that Kristaps Porzingis was going to be there to complete one of their versions of a big 3, depending on how you want to work the kind of their starting 6 if you throw Al Horford in there. And I have always, now I've been doing this mind-numbing schlock on the radio 28 years now. 22 years old, I got to sit in front of a microphone, and that was it, and off and running, right? And I've always used the joke for the really good teams in the NBA. Oh, when it is a Wednesday in February in Detroit and you don't want to be there. And to me, that's what it felt like for the Celtics last night. Is that it was it's cold, it's Detroit, they're not great, we don't want to be here. The difference is Detroit's plucky this year. You know, they're 8 games over 500. Cade Cunningham is really establishing himself as a true contributor and someone to be taken seriously in this league. So there was the part of me that was just like, okay, it's another Wednesday for the Celtics. But for the Detroit Pistons, I do think last night meant something. It was their first 20-point win against a team that had gone into that game with a .700 winning percentage or better since February of 2019 against the Nuggets. So if you're Detroit, you need to stack up credibility wins. Like if you're doing, if you're a Pistons fan, last night made you think, hey, man, we're a legitimate playoff team. Now, you're going to let your emotions run amok and think, oh, they can make an East Finals or something like that. That's where we will politely part ways. But I think if you're a Pistons fan, last night was the real kind of stamp on the hand and the evaluation of, hey, this team's pretty good. They're going in the right direction. They got some pieces. And I know that there's tougher schedule to come. And who knows, Detroit might ultimately just be one and done in the playoffs, and that's fine. But as we know in the NBA, there are tiers to this thing. And we know in the NBA, every great player, and I mean every great player, legendary guy, multiple champions, they all had to find their way through the incumbent. You can go all the way back to the 76ers in the early 80s, and then there came the Celtics, and then here came the Lakers to be able to battle with the Celtics. But, before the Pistons could take their spot, they had to beat the Celtics in the East, right? And then the Lakers ended up kind of fizzling out a little bit, but here came Jordan. Oh, and don't forget, let's interject Houston in there. There is hierarchy, there is learning, and there is sort of figuring out how to build a team to win in the playoffs. It's not just having the one great player, but there's always the steps that are taken. And if you're in Detroit today, I think you can really start to talk yourself into and feel like we're about to begin that process. It's not going to happen overnight. And there are teams that will go from, maybe being a first round out to jumping up and making a conference finals and then kind of sliding back a little bit. Even the Celtics dealt with that. Let's remember, Jason Tatum and crew did have a first-round loss to the Brooklyn Nets. There might have been some injury considerations to take into account there. But that was the series before the Celtics finally crashed through that kind of glass ceiling. And now they're world champs. And it's teams like Detroit last night that are getting their validation in beating the Celtics by 20, which, by the way, the 20-point loss for the Celts is their second largest of the season. That's gonna get Joe Mazzulla whooped up. That's gonna stick with the Celtics a little bit. And again, the one thing that the defending champs always get, everybody's best shot. And for Detroit, they were building to this to give Boston their best shot. And they're not on Boston's level. You gotta be real about it. They did beat them, but they're not on Boston's level, especially when you get into like a 5 or a 7 game series. But if you're Detroit, you got to be feeling pretty good about what happened last night. 855-212-4227, 855-212-4CBS. Dadgummit, there it was. I did it, Mike. There, it slipped in there. Couldn't help myself. Because I'm getting excited to thank one of the real NBA greats. When I think about all-time winners, whiners, winners, whiners, whiner. When I think about a guy who kind of profiles more like Kevin Durant in terms of maybe he's a little sensitive and, hey, he's pretty overrated. You ship him to this team or that team or whatever, and, he's going to be the third of a big three, and it never works out for Paul George. But Paul George has $200 million coming to him on his schedule, as they would call it, to play professional basketball. And I'm sure there was a lot of introspective into something like this. I'm sure that the Paul George of the Philadelphia 76ers, the season has really hit him hard. And as you're about to hear from the Podcast P podcast, Paul George is now finally ready to turn his sole attention, ladies and gentlemen, to just basketball. Here's the man in his own words.
I want to let the Podcast P family know that after today's episode with Dwight, I plan to take a break from the pod just to focus on getting my body right, getting mentally right, and, help this squad make a push towards our goal to finish the season out, give ourselves a chance to be in contentions to compete for a championship.
What do you say to that? Honest to God, I'm not a Philly fan. They eat their young, Philadelphia. They boo Santa. They booed Lindros in the finals. And you got this guy who's bounced around from team to team thinking he's way better than what he is. Now he's had the epiphany, ladies and gentlemen. America and Philadelphia. Now it's hit Paul George. 58 games into the year. $50 million a year. 4 years and 212, I think, is the number, right? Oh, because, a bunch of dopey media people made him all NBA once, so he gets Supermax contracts, and he's not a Supermax player on the floor. This is one of the biggest, most overrated guys, in my opinion, in the NBA. You can look at all the great numbers, but that's not a winner. 58 games into the year. And now he's going to say, now we're going to take a step back to focus on trying to be the 10 seed. All right, I have railed against Paul George as being one of those guys you go out and acquire to make your organization better. I've railed against that for years. How many more teams need to pick this guy up before he's either dinged up, he's hurt, his attention's going in another direction, the team just sucks pond water that he's on? I can't believe there are people who think this guy, Paul George, is a bona fide superstar. I don't get it. Thank you. Seriously. Is the general manager of the Philadelphia 76ers supposed to send him a text or a little note? Boy, I'll tell you, PG, I really appreciate your sacrifice to the basketball team by shelving your popular podcast so you'd actually show up and care about the damn team. Oh, my God. I'm not even a fan of the 76ers. I'm a fan of athletes that, care about their job. It's so NBA. It's so NBA that people are lauding this guy. That they're saying, oh, great job. Oh, he's digging in. Oh, my gosh. We wonder why Philadelphia stinks right now. It took 58 games for one of your best players to say, hey, you know what? Now I'm going to really invest everything into my career and what I'm getting paid for the rest of the season. Well, oh boy, kudos to you. I'll tell you, if you're another general manager in the NBA, you got to be thinking, I got to get a warrior like that. Oh, I need to go get a guy like that. Or he's a battler. Good grief. We also have, and we'll get to it a little bit later on because I lost my mind on Paul George. Kevin Durant, another guy who wants to, try to pick his team and I'd love to go there and play with my friends or whatnot. Why he didn't go back to the Golden State Warriors. And it says a lot about him. Speaking of that, a two-time national championship coach is basically out there being a jerk to everybody. What is going on with Dan Hurley? I'll get to that next. It's Gresh in for Gelb on Infinity Sports Network.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 4 minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Infinity and beyond.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show.
I am Gresh in for Gelb. It's hour 2 here on this Thursday. Thank you for making us and me your choice in Sports Talk Radio, wherever you are, coast to coast, border to border, and in America's hat known as Canada. You can get us around the world anywhere. On the Odyssey app, you get the old internet connection. You can get us on the Odyssey app, SiriusXM channel 158. And Yesterday was a pretty good night in college basketball. I know that what turned into like the number one play of the night last night was Michigan State hitting a half-court shot at Maryland to beat Maryland 58-55. And you look at Izzo's crew in Michigan State in the Big Ten, and they're at the top of the Big Ten, starting to play a better brand of basketball. And a little bit later on, we're going to get into a conference discussion of sort of what defines success for some of these big leagues that are going to have a lot of teams going to the NCAA tournament. But we also know, for those of you that are following college basketball the way you should be around this time of year, you know that the two-time defending national champions on the men's side are the UConn Huskies. And UConn beat Georgetown 93-79. Trying to look at the schedule here. They're going to play in Providence, which is the old Providence Civic Center, the Dunkin' Donuts Center, whatever it is that you want to call it, right down the road from where I am. I'm about 4 miles away from downtown Providence, Rhode Island, and I'm sure that game is already banged out. But, you know, when you look at UConn, it's been a little up and down this year. They've had some close wins. They've also lost twice to St. John's. You know, they beat Creighton by 4. They lost to Seton Hall 69-68. That's the one that maybe awoke the beast inside one Danny Hurley. Now, I know for those of you who know, Dan Hurley earlier this year ended up, I think, yelling at a referee and saying something to the effect of, "Don't turn your back to me. I'm the best coach in college basketball." And we know that Dan Hurley at times can be a little surly. He can be a little salty. And at times he could be outright dinkish. You know, my alma mater is University of Rhode Island. URI was lucky to have Dan Hurley for as long as they could. But I also know a lot of people down there. And boy, are there some stories. Whether it's from the brother, you know, because Bobby Hurley was there for a while as well as an assistant. And there were times where, you know, we had a thing when I played football. It was GATA, get after their arse. And that's what Dan Hurley did with people in the athletic department multiple times. And sometimes you have to be that way to be able to, you know, get change to happen. And Lord knows my alma mater needed that. But Dan Hurley's team is 19-9. Maybe they're not playing up to expectations, but I just feel like Dan Hurley has turned into a complete, utter dink. And I get it, there's coaching your team hard. I get it, there's doing things with edge. And I even get really walking to the line where maybe you're almost going to fall off that cliff to be able to push people as hard as you can to try to get done what you want to get done, and to also get people at an institution who are maybe used to doing things a certain way to get them to do things a little differently. So the edge is and can be good. But off of a simple question yesterday, Dan Hurley finds a way to zing the media. Check this out.
I mean, I think the press has been an asshole to me the whole year. Oh, wait, you mean the... Oh, I thought you meant just people acting far worse than me. What was that? I didn't know what you were talking about there. I'm sorry. They've been fair at times.
Try to say it with a laugh at the end, but he got the message across. And he wasn't even listening to the question intently because it was just an opening to be able to zing the media a little bit. And my reaction to stuff like that from Dan Hurley is twofold. Number one, what is it that you want? Like, I hear these coaches all the time. Oh, it being unfair to us. Or the coverage is biased. Or a college basketball coach or a college football coach will read something on the internet and it becomes, well, that guy's just against us. It's never the context of, well, that guy's a columnist and it's his job to give an opinion. Or for those of you that are watching on the Infinity Sports Network YouTube right now, I'm about to hold my hand up, right? How about talk show hosts? I have to wear different hats and different roles, but a part of my job is to be a commentator. A part of my job is to say to Dan Hurley in moments like this, well, if you think the media is being a-holes to you, what were you expecting? What has been unfair coverage? See, that's the thing with the college basketball coaches is that I think they get the most sensitive the most quickly because they have to because of their team, because the kids are that way, or a lot of the kids are that way, where it's, let me get on the phone. Let me go get my dopamine. Let me see what people are saying about me on Twitter. Let me go post my Instagram stuff or whatever it is, right? Much more in tune with what's going on online more and more. So as a coach, you do have to have kind of that public pushback, which can make you look like a sensitive ween. This, to me, feels like the real Dan Hurley. And Danny Hurley is a great basketball coach. You don't win back-to-back national titles by being some ham and egger. This guy has the money. He had the Lakers chasing after him. He got exactly what he wanted from UConn. And there is the part of me that wonders, in the mind of the paranoid college coach, is there a feeling that maybe some things are slipping away a little bit? You know, some of the power, the real leverage that you had last year when the LA Lakers wanted to put Dan Hurley and his wife on a jet, fly them all the way across the country to try to woo them to go into a league where Danny Hurley would have to completely change his coaching style. He's not going to be able to protest every call with the ferocity that he does as a college coach. This guy's losing his mind coaching 35 games over his team being inconsistent. Imagine what would have been like if this guy gone to the pros. He's going to snap at LeBron James the way he does some of his guys. Now, I get it. He'd back off a little bit, don't get me wrong, but that's still in there. It's still in him. It's still really the way he coaches. And then the other part of it is, for someone like Dan Hurley, you represent the university. There is no bigger name at the University of Connecticut than Dan Hurley. If I asked you right now, let me ask you this. Mike, I'm not putting you on the spot. I'm not trying to be a jerk. You might know this off the top of your head. Who's a UConn football coach? Do you know? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, of course. It's Steve Callahan.
Jim Mora Jr. is their football coach. It's
close.
It's a pretty big name, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's a guy who coached in the NFL. And you'd never know it. So, for Dan Hurley, you are the front-facing forward representative of the university that you use leverage against from the Lakers to be able to get everything you wanted. Now, I know these coaches want more, they want more, they want more, they want more resources, they want more buildings, they want more of this, they want more of that. I get it. They're never happy. But when you go out of your way to take a question and you twist it to take a zing at the media people, like it matters. Your team's not crumbling. You're going to win they're going to beat Providence on Saturday. They're going to win their 20th game. They're going to have a chance, I believe, unless something crazy happens, for them to be able to try to win their third national championship in a row and maybe be like an NBA team and just sort of hit their stride and their health at the right time. I just feel like with Dan Hurley, it's starting to slip away from him a little bit. and his ego is now starting to drive sort of the public face of UConn. And I'm not sitting here defending UConn, don't get me wrong. Like, again, you reap what you sow, and, you know, if you've given in to a two-time national championship coach and you set him up for everything that he wants and he's still going to sit there and bitch and moan and complain and point the finger at the media, then, well, you're just going to have to live with that. But I'm really surprised that this much of the angst and anger and aggravation has come out in a guy like Dan Hurley. I am Gresh, in for Gelb. This is the Infinity Sports Network, 855-212-4227. You can get me on, whether it is subscribing on YouTube, get me on X, get me on Insta, get me on the Tick and the Talk, at The Real Gresh, Gresh. You can also follow Infinity Sports Radio on social, at INF Sportsnet. I want to get to something that happened in the SEC last night. And it's weird to say Kentucky at Oklahoma is an SEC battle, but here we are. So last night, Kentucky gets a hotly contested win, a 1-point win for Kentucky on the road at Oklahoma, right? And there's a little bit of controversy at the end of the game, just in terms of a call that didn't go one way or another. And there was a guy, Otega Owe, who is playing for Kentucky, who played for Oklahoma last year. So during the game, Owe ended up hearing chants of, traitor and, the typical stuff that you figure people would end up kind of hooting at a young kid playing basketball, right? And Owe is the only Division I player this century to score 25 or more points in a road win against a team he played for the previous season. Now, I can hear you now kind of chuckling and being like, man, that is some real semantics in coming up with a stat, but it's really more reflective of the NIL era that we really live in the world of college athletics. And it's a weird, off the beaten path stat, but I just have a funny feeling this is the first of many of these in terms of Otega Owe and playing for one team, and then, hey, even within your same league, you're going to go play another team, right? Or play for another team in that same league. So we get to the end of the game. It's a controversial call. The emotions are high. The fans are hooting at Owe and others. And they have that traditional handshake line. I'm not anti-handshake, don't get me wrong. But I do think maybe we need to kind of re-examine it a little bit in a situation like this, where, number one, you knew going in it was going to be combustible. Number two, you had a controversial call in the final minute viewed by one fan base one way and one fan base the other way, and one of them ain't good. Then you have just liquored up home fans who are not happy that there was a quote-unquote traitor in the building playing on the other team. And during the handshakes, there's a little bit of a dust-up. And then you had a guy who hucked a beer out of the stands at the Kentucky kids. And, one of the Kentucky kids was using hand gestures or whatever. I tried to decipher it. I just, figured I'd let it go. It's just players being players, kids being kids, whatever in the world it is, right? But do we really have to have those post-game handshakes amongst the players? And I was thinking about this. 18 to 22-year-olds, right? I have my oldest, I have two stepkids. My oldest is in Florida. He's a caddy. 22 years old. Be 23 on tax day. My youngest is at Bryant University. He's a second semester sophomore. He'll be 21 in September. And I tried to think about my two and how they would handle an emotionally charged situation where you're fighting to try to get into an NCAA tournament. You know, the battle in the SEC is big in terms of seeding for the conference tournament, trying to get to the next level, all that kind of stuff. And then I tried to think of me, the former college football player from, 92 to 95. Now, I ended up graduating when I was 21 years old, so I was 17 when I went to college. I know how I handled things back then. It was wrong most of the time. And I just wonder, we say to these kids who are 18 to 22 years old, who are also now making a little bit of money, and we're saying to them, play your tail off, you better play hard, you better care, and oh, by the way, as soon as you lose a heartbreaker, you need to shelve your emotions and stop and shake hands with the people on the other team. I kind of feel like last night was one of those spots in college basketball where maybe you were kind of set up for something to happen. And it did end up happening last night. So in the SEC, I know things get really charged up. Maybe there's a way they can kind of tweak that a little bit. Maybe there's a way that, just the coaches can kind of go over there and shake hands and tell the players after a real emotional game, hey, everybody can just go back to the locker room. We don't have to have all of this pomp and circumstance to where something nutty could really happen. 855-212-4227. A lot of news from the Combine. Travis Hunter spoke today. We got clarity on the Abdul Carter injury. Of course, he's one of those guys that you're thinking of for the number one pick, but the league is talking about making changes. Are we getting robot first downs? And changes to overtime that I don't know if I love it. We'll get to it next. I am Gresh in for Gelb. This is Infinity Sports Network.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 2 minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Welcome back to the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network.
You can also watch me do this show on YouTube for Zach. I am Gresh in for Gelb on Infinity Sports Network. Go to the Infinity Sports Network YouTube page, and you can check out my fancy sweatshirt. You need to see what's on it, so go check it out. And if you're getting out of the car, wherever you go, you can take us anywhere on the Odyssey app. This portion of the Zach Gelb Show is brought to you by Ethos Life, the easy way to get life insurance in 10 minutes, up to $2 million in coverage, no medical exam, just a few health questions. Get your free quote at checkethos.com. Not available in all states. Well, of course, anytime there is a gathering of NFL people, it feels like the rules are going to be discussed. And as the combine really gets into full swing, and we will have notes from the combine coming up next hour with Gresh in for Gelb here on the Infinity Sports Network. A couple of things that are being floated out there. And let me just say this quickly. I think what happens at the combine is the NFL and the competition committee have at least a general idea as to what they want to talk about, right? And we're going to float it out there, right? We'll find the fighting beat guys at Starbucks, and we'll feed them the information. Or we tell a little birdie over here. We tell someone from ESPN, or you tell a talking head, somebody who's, some dope like me who's going to talk about it, almost as if it is the trial balloon. Hey, let's float this out there and see if NFL fans are going to revolt. And among the things that are, going to be discussed is regular season overtime could be modified. So let me read it as it's perfectly written here. Under the current rules for regular season overtime, each team is guaranteed an offensive possession in OT. Unless the team that gets the ball first scores a touchdown on the opening possession, then the game is over, right? So if you win the toss, you get the ball, you score a touchdown, it's over. In the postseason, both teams are guaranteed at least one possession, even if the team that gets the ball first scores a touchdown on the opening possession. It's not yet clear what the overtime change will be, but the NFL is thinking about having the regular season rule mirror the postseason rule. So my first thought is television, believe it or not. I don't think it's about a sense of fairness. I know that, when the Buffalo Bills didn't get a chance to touch the ball against Kansas City in overtime, we've turned it into a bad thing. How about this? Don't give up a touchdown. How about that? Why is that so hard for the NFL and the players and everyone to grasp? We're so offensive minded. How about this? Let me just throw something out there, right? Do just offenses win championships? Thank you. You know the answer. I'm being hyperbolous, but you get it, right? So we've weighted this rule, and we've weighted this thing so that it's all about the offense. How about rewarding a defense that maybe gets a stop? Like maybe if a defense gives up a touchdown, then maybe it should end up costing their team the game, because there are 3 phases of it. And I really detest the fact that the overtime rule was changed just because we had one big-name quarterback in a game between Josh Allen and Pat Mahomes, and one didn't get to touch the ball in overtime, so by goodness, let's overturn the apple cart and try to tweak the rules a little bit and all that kind of stuff. I always think that whenever there are changes, especially to timing, end of game, and overtime, that the league is not thinking about the fairness of it all. They're not thinking about who did or didn't get to get the ball, or who didn't get to win. That it's always about creating more drama for the television show that isn't manufactured, or you understand what I'm saying. When people do the whole, the script, it's like, stop it. So I don't know where the league is going to go with it. It would make, for as much as I think the overtime rule is stupid, it would make sense for the NFL to adopt it for the regular season as well. And I can't believe I just said that. I am Gresh, in for Zach Gelb on the Infinity Sports Network, 855-212-4227. What could be changing in the NFL is also, other than overtime, virtual measurement could finally be happening. I don't know how many of you all watch either tennis or the TGL Golf League that is on ESPN right now. And the reason I bring up the TGL is Tiger Woods and friends created this giant, it's like the SoFi Center or SoFi Arena, I think is what they call it, right? And it's this massive, really esports arena that's got a huge screen on one side, other screens to kind of keep track of like lineups and scores and things like that. But the technology that they're using for these pro golfers to go up there and hit a golf ball the way they normally would full speed, but you're using the technology of the VR golf. And if you haven't checked out the TGL, do so. The way they use the green, it's cool. If you're a golfer like me and you're kind of landlocked and you're stuck inside during the winter, it's at least something different to watch. But I digress. Because in there is all of the tracking technology that I think the NFL and others would be able to use. Except it's pros that are standing there and they're whacking a golf ball and they're figuring out the height, the spin, the trajectory, the miles per hour, where it's going to land, all that kind of stuff. And in the NFL, we can't come to an accord to use any of that stuff to be able to measure where first downs could be. Well, now maybe that is going to change. And I bring up tennis because how many times do you watch a tennis match and you've seen the ball hit the line on the right or the left, and then they go to the, I don't know, whatever it's called, Vision Quest. I have no idea the name of I think it's that Hawkeye technology or whatever. And they go to it, and they show the ball hitting the line, right? There's the quick replay and boom, and they're moving on and there's no more bickering over it. Well, the NFL could go to using Sony's Hawkeye Skeletrack system. It's amazing. It's a 14-camera system that specifically monitors more than 24 skeletal points on a player's body. There is a quote in here that says, that I'm reading, it says, that system along with the chips and the footballs and the other 18 specific cameras strategically placed around the stadium can all be combined to harvest a fully computerized model that potentially tracks where the ball is when players are down, if someone has achieved a first down, or if they have scored, right? That's from CBS Sports NFL insider Jonathan Jones, who is out at the Combine. I guess my question is, how come we haven't been using this before? And here's the other thing, too. We rely now so much on instant replay in the NFL. If you can figure out how to get a 14-camera system and 18 other cameras that are strategically placed around the stadium, then why haven't we been doing this as a uniform system for replay anyway, so that everybody gets the same camera angles? Because I know we're kind of digging into television production here, but the amount of cameras that you have on Thursday Night Football, Sunday Night Football, and Monday Night Football are very different than the amount of cameras that the networks bring when you're going to watch the Jets and the Jaguars with, I know Rich Ackerman will laugh at this because he gets the reference and might be among the few who do. For the Beasley-Reese game, they're sending 6 or 7 cameras and that's it. I don't know who is like Spiriditas on the low man on the totem pole now over there at CBS or something like that. But basically the game that got the broadcasters where you go, oh, this guy again, they never get the amount of camera angles that the bigger games do. So why wouldn't be going to this? My only issue is when I read that quote, it said they can all be combined to harvest a fully computerized model that potentially tracks where the ball is when players are down. That's a pretty big caveat right there. And then finally, the replay assist could have more power soon. They might be able to step in for an objective penalty, like a face mask. And this version of replay assist would only apply if a flag is thrown that should not have been. Oh, boy. I don't know if we necessarily want to go down the road yet of objective calls and trying to pick up flags and things of that nature. As long as we can do this stuff quickly, then I'm down for it. But I know that Sam Darnold had a great year, and there was an issue in a game with Sam Darnold back in Week 8 that has become the impetus for maybe giving the replay folks a little more power. 855-212-4227. Well, we knew when Luka Doncic got traded, it was only going to be a matter of time before, as the great Paul Harvey would say, we hear the rest of the story. And oh boy, there's a lot. And it might be exactly what we thought it was going to be. We'll get to that next, this Luka hit piece. But first, it's time to get updated on everything in the world of sports. Here is the one, the only, Rich Ackerman.
Infinity Sports Network. Sports Flash.
Penn State pass rusher Abdul Carter is coming off a shoulder injury and dealing with a stress reaction in his foot. Doctors have reportedly advised against surgery for the latter, and he will be able to work out at Penn State Pro Day later next month. Carter and Travis Hunter are candidates to go number 1 overall. The Heisman Trophy winner was at the podium today at the Combine with more than 100 reporters on hand and declined to say which teams he's talked to so far. But Hunter is no doubt the most unique prospect in years with the ability to dominate on both sides of the ball. And just because he's headed to the next level, that doesn't mean he plans to scale back.
I feel like I put my body through a lot. I do a lot of treatment people don't get to see that part, what I do for my body to make sure I'm 100% each game. But I feel like I can do it because nobody have done it, and I know I can do it. I did it at college level, which the game is, we rarely get breaks, and it's a lot more breaks in the NFL.
Trey Smith is perhaps the top free agent this year, but he's not going anywhere for now, with the Chiefs reportedly placing the franchise tag on their Pro Bowl guard. They are hoping to work out a long-term extension for now. He'll make over $23 million next year. Denver has won 10 of 11 and continues its road trip tonight in Milwaukee after beginning the excursion with a win in Indianapolis. I'm Rich Acker.
The Infinity Sports Network is on your smart speaker. All you have to say is, play Infinity Sports Network.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. 45 seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Welcome back to the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network.
Luka Doncic and the Lakers are in the news once again. Except this time it's the whispers. The whisper campaign. Didn't we know that once Luka Doncic got traded away from the Dallas Mavericks to the LA Lakers, that it was only going to be a matter of time before everybody started talking, right? It's happened everywhere. It happens to coaches. It happens to big-time players. You know, I even saw Rachel Nichols, who was out hammering the folks who are kind of leaking out some of this audio, or leaking out some of this info, I should say, from the Dallas organization. So I know that The Athletic has been a part of this reporting, and now it's everywhere. But, you know, this general manager for Dallas, Nico Harrison, has just been getting dragged everywhere. Like, the guy was standing courtside as the Lakers and the Mavs were warming up, and there were Laker fans who were like taunting the guy, you know, giving him the whole "thank you, Nico, thank you, Nico," and they're just taunting the hell out of the guy, right? So the word is, now that the whispers are starting to come out, that apparently the Mavs did not like Doncic's, quote, taste for beer and hookah. And apparently that played a part in the concerns that his health could cause a premature end to his basketball career. Hey, Mike or Stu, do you guys hookah? Have you ever hookah'd?
I have hookah'd. It's not my thing, but I've hookah'd.
Okay. As someone who is a marijuana advocate, and I live in a state where it's legal, and, you know, it's arguably, it's one of the things that's probably kept me from, and I'm being real about this because I just know myself, like it's kept me calm enough to where I don't want to choke people. But the hookah thing I never understood. Like, I like cigars, you know, I puff the Chiba and stuff like that. But, you know, the hookah thing, like, is that, and I'm speaking from pure ignorance, right? Is that like the equivalent of like smoking cigarettes and stuff like that? Or, like, I just wonder, is that something that is really, truly detrimental the way it would be if, you know, he were going Len Dawson back in the 60s and, like, having a drink in the locker room in a Marlboro Red?
It's certainly, it's from a performative standpoint, it's probably more like smoking cigars. It's more of like a social thing, right? You got to go there.
That's what I thought, yeah.
It takes like an hour or so to burn. a coal and to get through it. They have different flavors, kind of like how people have vapes and they'll have like cotton candy and banana and strawberry, whatever. So it tastes good, but it's really just like you hang out with your friends, you smoke the hookah, you have good food, you have good drinks, you listen to music, and it's more of like a hangout social thing.
Okay.
As far as the safety part of it, like, it's definitely much safer than a cigarette, right? With all the chemicals and stuff that are in packaged cigarettes, it's certainly not that. It's basically just like fresh tobacco, and they burn a coal. It goes through water like a bong in a sense.
Yeah.
And so it's cleaned a little bit. It's definitely not as like chemical as you would be smoking a cigarette or like, a junky cigar, but like a really good cigar that's just nicely wrapped with like really good quality tobacco. Imagine that just purified through water a little bit and tastes maybe a little bit better.
Okay, that is great intel, Mike. And thank you for walking me through that, because you've kind of helped me land on, it would be like the 2025 version in a way of Michael Jordan ripping a cigar every night, where he's playing cards, having cigars, stuff like that. And I know Michael Jordan is one of one, don't get me wrong, but it's now kind of clarified it, like the drinking for Luka, especially beer, that I can understand an organization being like, man, that's just going to wear this guy down. If he decides to pack it in, he could pack it on pretty quickly if he's not as active, or, does this guy still want to go out and like do half his workout while he's injured and then drink and maybe put on weight? So I guess I can understand it, but was it really a deal breaker for Dallas? Like, is beer and hookah, I can't believe I just thought of this. There was the Red Sox won the championship in 2004, and then I want to say it might have been 2007 or 2008. I can't remember. But there is 1 year in the 2000s, in the late before 2010, I think. It's called the Chicken and Beer Red Sox, where you had a group of pitchers, and it was John Lackey, Josh Beckett, might have been Bronson Arroyo in there, but there was a group of these pitchers where it was known as the Beer and Chicken Red Sox. And that's how they remembered that season, and they broke up that staff and, led to a whole bunch of different stuff, right? So when I think about it from the Luka standpoint, instead of beer and chicken, like the Red Sox were, it's beer and hookah would be the reason they soured on Luka. I guess I have two questions off of it, folks, at 855-212-4227. Is that enough to trade a player of this talent? I know they had to turn around and give him another max contract, and it would have been super max and big money, and a lot of people say that Luka is worth it. But is beer and hookah enough for a trade? And then we knew Dallas had a reason as to why they moved on. And I'm sure for a lot of people, it is I don't even think about this. Come on. Is this really that big a deal? Michael Jordan drank and gambled and smoked cigars and all that kind of stuff for lots of years during what was his legendary Hall of Fame career. And I know that I do believe I've seen on social media a picture or two of Luka Doncic, like coming in from workouts and stuff like that. We knew that the rest of this was going to come out. Here's really the question. Is this enough to move the needle with Luka Doncic? I did hear someone say, are some of the issues in interpretation, like the beer and hookah and stuff like that, and the kind of work ethic or the shape that Luka Doncic gets himself into, is it cultural? Is that just more what, the European players would do? They play a game in France, and when they're done, they go have hookah and French wine or something like that. Is it more indicative of, say, the European ball player than it is someone who was raised here a little differently when you're taught, a Hulk Hogan it. You say your prayers and you take your vitamins. And then you hope you go on to great success. 855-212-4227. So not only do we have the Lucas story that is out there, we now have arguably Kevin Durant throwing himself under the bus. So Kevin Durant apparently had an opportunity to leave Phoenix, and he had the chance to go back to the Golden State Warriors. Kevin Durant was on the Draymond Green show with Baron Davis. So he's talking to a member of the Golden State Warriors. Here is Kevin Durant in his own words, talking about why he did not go back to Golden State. And boy, this is some kind of cut. Take a listen to this.
I want my career to end on my terms. That's the only thing. Bingo. That's the only thing I'm worried about, because I see a lot of dudes that don't get that opportunity. So I want to keep putting in that work to make that choice on my own. But as far as the Warriors, I didn't want to move. And then as a player like me, I cost a lot. Me going into your team in the middle of the season, it's going to be a big blow to any team I'm going to. I get why y'all want to trade me. Simple fact, that's just business. But from me looking at it, I'm just like, it just don't make sense for either side right now to go do that when we just play the season out. And if that's the decision you want to make in the off season, then you figure it out. If I can stop it, then why not? And then the narratives that's going to come with all that I mean, I could play under the noise. It's a simple fact that, I didn't feel like it was a need to make that big of a change.
You can't play under the noise, KD. You've proven you can't play under the noise. Has there ever been a superstar in the NBA with the talent of Kevin Durant and the sensitivity of Kevin Durant as well? There's a little bit of humble ego in there. Hey, man, I'm a lot. You bring me to your team, and I understand the business end of it and why you might want to trade me and da-da-da. But are we really going to believe that Kevin Durant is going to give up the control? I know I flipped out on Paul George a little earlier for, putting the podcast P thing aside to focus on, the job that pays you $45 million a year or something to that effect. And thank you, Paul George. Do we really think that Kevin Durant is going to give up the stroke or the ability to pick his next team, to pick the next place that he is going to fail, to pick the next place where he's going to put together his group and band of merry men to then drive you to 11th place in the Western Conference, but sit there and like a bunch of, zombie-like dopey fans are, ooh, Kevin Garnett, we Kevin Durant. My God, man, we got this great player. Hey, that's a reason to watch the team. And no, the only place Kevin Durant ever went where he won a championship is Golden State, because they had a championship culture. And that's a part of the reason why the guy did not want to go back there. He says in one hand, I can play flying under the radar. No, you can't. Imagine how sensitive that situation in Golden State would have gotten if you sent someone in there named Kevin Durant versus sending in Jimmy Butler III. Kevin Durant didn't want that smoke. He's already, unfortunately, going to have to live with the fact that the overwhelming majority of us as basketball fans don't really look at his 2 championships and say, hey, that guy was the reason they went out and won those. The latest from the Combine, the news from yesterday, the news from today, and an update on Abdul Carter. Next, I'm Gresh for Gelb, Infinity Sports Network.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 4 minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
To infinity and beyond.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
Gresh leading you through the Gelb Show here on the Infinity Sports Network. 855-212-4227. I encourage you, I implore you, ladies and gentlemen, Follow me on Twitter and Instagram and subscribe to the YouTube. And how about me dancing on the tick and the talk? You can get me at one address, at The Real Gresh, Gresh. Put it in any of those platforms, and you'll be able to find me anywhere you are. You can also listen to this show on the Odyssey app. Download the Odyssey app to be able to take us and all of the great sports programming on the Odyssey app wherever you go. So, yesterday we got the news that, maybe Abdul Carter might not be the number one pick in the NFL draft because had a stress reaction found in his foot. So for at least last night, there were a lot of people who were like, is this guy going to need surgery? Is Abdul Carter going to have something done to his foot that could jeopardize him being the number one pick potentially in this upcoming NFL draft? And after a little bit of, digging in with doctors, and basically we found out today the doctors recommended no surgery for Abdul Carter. Of course, this was just a day after he stood up in front of everyone the way Travis Hunter did today and talked about himself. And he said, hey, I'm the number one pick. I think I'm the best player in the draft. I should go number one. And then about an hour later, it's like, oh, yeah, by the way, this guy might have an issue with his foot. It's led me to really realize that I think the Tennessee Titans have got to start hyping up Cam Ward a little bit. Is there a way for them to be able to create a false market out there where it doesn't look like Tennessee is really going to be in the market for a quarterback? However, should they start to put the good mouth on Cam Ward and talk about how teams have called, people are interested, he's worthy of being the number one pick? Even if you're a Tennessee and you think it is complete and utter hooey, and you're literally shoveling it onto people's shoes, that's what you got to do to build a market. Start building the narrative so that you can build the market that you're really looking for. And then it's Travis Hunter. And Travis Hunter spoke to the media today. And folks, I really hate falling in love with some of these draft picks. But when I think about Travis Hunter, I heard someone break it down, and it's a great point. This is a kid who has fame. He has money. After Deion, he's probably the most second well-known or popular person on campus in Boulder. So it's not like this is, the prototypical kid who has worked his way up, was happy to get a scholarship, and is now about to get his big-time payday. No, Travis Hunter went to Colorado. He played on both sides of the ball. He stayed locked in on what he needed to do. He won the Heisman Trophy. He made a little bit of money along the way. And now this is a kid who's standing up there and talking about playing on both sides of the ball. And I don't think it's as nutty as people think. Here's Travis Hunter from earlier today talking about playing both ways.
Did some meetings at receiver, did some meetings at DB, so still up in the air. They say nobody has ever done it for real the way I do it, but I tell them that I'm just different. I'm a different person.
He is a different person. He is a different guy. Now, is he going to be able to play 100 snaps a game in the NFL? Probably not. But you can manage that a little differently. You're playing him 60 snaps on defense. There's no reason you couldn't get 20 snaps of Travis Hunter on offense every game and be consistent with it. Now, it's a lot of work. It's a lot more work than would go into him doing it at the college level. But if there's one thing as an evaluator and somebody that, for me, I can really sort of sink my teeth into and believe is someone who at least did it at the college level and stayed focused enough and put in the work enough to be able to play on both sides of the ball. Hunter was asked, still we'll get to number 4 here. Travis Hunter was asked, do you prefer corner or wide receiver? This is from CBS Sports HQ.
Do they keep asking you if you're going to be a corner or wide?
Yeah, they ask me that.
Are you paying attention to how teams say they see you?
Yeah, I mean, my first meeting was at receiver, so yeah,
Oh,
definitely.
the first meeting was at receiver.
Yeah.
And you've never felt strongly about which one you prefer.
Nah, never.
Because he knows he can make buku bucks if he's the first guy to be able to consistently play and produce on both sides of the ball. 855-212-4227. Travis Hunter just continues and continues and continues, in my opinion, to impress in just so many ways. And the more I think people get around the kid, the more that I've realized he has not been Deionized. Like, he's not about himself. He's focused on what he needs to do. And let's be real, especially when you have a couple of bucks in your pocket. When you're in college, there's lots of ways to get distracted, if you know what I mean. And that did not happen to Travis Hunter in his time in Boulder. Some of the other news from the Combine today, as I'm watching the defensive linemen do their workouts as well, you know, for those who are into the measurements and stuff like that, which I'm really not. I want to know, like, maybe how fat a guy is, you know. If a defensive lineman was playing at 330, what did he come in at for the Combine, showing that he can lose weight and get ready, little things like that. But overall, you know, we're in the shirts and shorts Olympics, really. But some of the news that came out yesterday involved the San Francisco 49ers. And I said yesterday in talking about the quarterback carousel that, you know, somebody is going to have to pay Brock Purdy. And I say somebody because if I were John Lynch and running the San Francisco 49ers and I needed to give Brock Purdy $250 million with a very healthy chunk of that money guaranteed, I don't know if I'd do it. Now, this year, Brock Purdy goes from making under $1 million to making a little over $5 million. So for those who wondered if Brock Purdy would hold out, he hasn't made a ton of money anyway. This would be the biggest year of his NFL career. But if he were ever going to sit out and try to press the 49ers on getting something done, this would be the year for him to do that. And even though it'd be his most amount of money, you know, say he misses a game or two because he's holding out and really tries to, you know, press it with the 49ers, he'll end up getting that dough back. And I know before you start texting me and tweeting me that, well, the rules are different now and they can find these guys and stuff like that. The NFL left their way around it. Just see what happened with the Patriots with Matthew Judon, where they didn't penalize him going out the door. So before everybody goes, you know, oh, it's punitive because of the money that they'll ding you for, there are ways around that, even though it's been sort of put out there that the organizations have to find these guys. You can still figure it out. But John Lynch spoke at the Combine yesterday on the Brock Purdy contract.
We have started negotiations. We're talking. We want Brock to be our quarterback as long as we're here and beyond, and we'll leave it at that. I think the final thing, there's no guarantees that we get something done, but my experience has been when both sides are motivated, there's ample opportunity to do so, and we've been able to do that. So,
well, that's the thing. If you're from the Brock Purdy side, how motivated are you to get a deal done right now? You know, if you think about it, if Brock Purdy plays this year for $5.5 million, whatever it is, and then he ends up getting franchised next year, you're talking about at least 1 year at probably around $40 million. Now, that ain't bad to make in a year. That's life-changing money, even though you're playing in California and that stupid state's going to rip half of it out because of taxes or whatever. If you're still left with $18 million in cash when it's all said and done, you're probably in pretty good shape. But if you're the 49ers, is that the best way for you to go? Because whether it's Jimmy Garoppolo on to Brock Purdy, it feels like the 49ers are in like with their quarterbacks. They don't fall in love with their quarterbacks. And right now it just feels like the 49ers are in like with Brock Purdy. But man, oh man, you start talking about guaranteeing like $150 million to this guy? I don't know if I want to be in that business. Maybe the 1 year of a franchise tag isn't the worst thing in the world for the 49ers to be able to handle this situation. According to the general manager, Mickey Loomis, the New Orleans Saints are going to stick with Derek Carr as their quarterback. And I know that Derek Carr and Aaron Rodgers are very different people. They're very different players. And one guy's legacy is Hall of Fame, and the other one is probably a team Hall of Famer for the Raiders or something like that, right? But to me, New Orleans was in a very similar spot that the Jets found themselves in. Now, the Jets had every reason to, I guess, personally not like Aaron Rodgers. That I can understand. I think in New Orleans, personally, they like Derek Carr. But if you're a new head coach in Kellen Moore, you're walking into that situation with the GM, Mickey Loomis, and you say, I got this guy Carr. He's a good player. He's not a great player, but he's a good player. Do you think you can get enough out of him for us to keep him around? I really thought that there would be a chance that Derek Carr would just get shipped off to the sweet good night, because if you're Kellen Moore, you want to go with your guy or tear it down and start new and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of feel like with New Orleans, it's the, we'll sort of hold our nose here. We'll hold our nose and just kind of deal with another year of Carr to figure out what they're going to do long term at quarterback. I feel like New Orleans is a lot like Dallas in that, don't they do a lot of the same stuff every year? Like, it feels like every year New Orleans will say, who's the highest paid guy on our roster? Okay, let's go to him and let's just completely tear up his contract and figure out the way to manipulate the cap from there. And that's why you have these massive cap charges when these guys ultimately age out or flame out. If you're New Orleans, it almost feels like you need to have a bottoming out year. Just get the sheet clean to then start to build through the draft once again. And maybe it's time in New Orleans for them to kind of turn the page on Mickey Loomis a little bit. That guy's been there for a long time. They keep doing, in my opinion, a lot of the same stuff. I don't know. Feels like they need a reboot there, but I'm not completely shocked that Derek Carr is still going to be there. And, of course, we know that Aaron Rodgers is going to be a free agent, and we'll see how that works out. Speaking of Aaron Rodgers' old team, Green Bay said they would listen to offers on Jair Alexander. That's almost like you're just putting a for sale sign in your front yard, right? Like, hey, here's this player. We know that he's up for auction. If you'd like to come bid, that's great. That's fine. It's just sort of saying, hey, can you make us an offer that we can accept? Not even the make us an offer we can't refuse. It feels like with Green Bay, it's the, we know we need to cycle out some of these guys that we maybe don't really love or whatever, and let's figure out how to do it. And you just plunk that for sale sign right down there. We'll get to the latest from the Combine. I know where the Combine is held. The general manager of the Indianapolis Colts made some news yesterday. We'll hear Chris Ballard try to talk his way out of maybe insulting his right now starting quarterback in Anthony Richardson. We'll let you listen to that. We'll gather up the latest news from the Combine as well. 855-212-4227. I'm Gresh, in for Zach Gelb on Infinity Sports Network.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 4 minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Welcome back to the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network.
You know, we have lots of teams at the Combine that are looking for a quarterback, whether they want a veteran free agent quarterback, whether they want to draft a guy. People are looking for people to chuck that football around. And, well, the Indianapolis Colts are no different. And, boy, the GM of the Colts, Chris Ballard, really said some stuff yesterday. I am Gresh in for Gelb on the Infinity Sports Network. You can follow us on all the socials at INF Sportsnet. You can get me at The Real Gresh, Gresh. So the drafting of Anthony Richardson made waves a couple years ago because he was such a young guy coming out of the University of Florida, still only 22 years old, and it's been a bit of a bumpy ride for Anthony Richardson as the starting quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts. And in a year where the Colts don't make the playoffs again, and it feels like there's a little bit of heat turned up on the general manager, Chris Ballard, with a home game in Indy, spoke at the Combine yesterday, and boy, did he make some news with the comments he made about Anthony Richardson and the Indianapolis Colts open quarterback job. Here's Ballard yesterday.
We knew there's going to be some hiccups along the way, and I know we all want a finished product right now. I do, you do, fans do, we all do. But I think as he continues to progress in his young career, us adding competition, I think will help up everybody's game.
In terms of acquiring that quarterback, is everything a potential avenue, whether it be draft ratings?
It's all on, yes, everything's on the table. It'll be open. That's correct. And of course, it's got to be somebody that can really challenge from a production standpoint too.
Wow. So the general manager of the Colts let his quarterback know that it's going to be an open quarterback competition, and then mentions it's got to be basically what he's saying. There's got to be somebody worth a damn to come in and challenge Anthony Richardson, which, to be quite honest with you, if we're really looking at the way the kids played, it's not that hard. It's not that hard to find somebody to come in and challenge Richardson. But as soon as Chris Ballard got off the stage, the local Indianapolis media swarmed him. So Ballard's in a spot where he might be realizing that maybe, just maybe, he sort of opened a can of worms that he didn't want to. And here is about a minute, or so of Chris Ballard trying to sort of talk his way out of what he just said and massage the situation if Anthony Richardson is going to get his nose out of joint. This is some good verbal gymnastics from Chris Ballard.
We've had good conversation. Anthony's accepted all of it. Like, he understands there needs to be some growth in his work. That's the one thing I'm really proud of him about. Like, there's no deferring or, defensiveness. It's like, I know, I got to go to work. I think understanding the enormity of who the quarterback is, and what the value of that position is. I think I don't want to say naive when he first came in the league, but there's a little naivety. But here's what I know. He is really competitive. And I think for a 6-game stretch there, we saw some really special stuff out of him. Now we just got to get consistent. He's a really good dude. He cares, and I think he'll put the work in. So it'll be fun to watch as we move through this. His background when he came in the league and when we took him is what it is. So we got to work through that.
And just to be clear about what you said up there, I mean, if you sign a quarterback, he comes in, and you're going to consider that best man wins, right? Yeah. And I mean, it's a big boy league, so it's fine. But that's what you're saying, correct?
That's
right?
correct.
Okay. Wonder how Anthony Richardson feels about that. I wonder if Anthony Richardson kind of looks at it and views it the same way. I don't know about that. Now, here's the other thing, too. And I don't want to be disrespectful to Anthony Richardson, but I do kind of want to defend him a little bit. How many 22-year-olds really know work ethic the way that you need to work to get better at the skills that aren't related to your athleticism? Like, Anthony Richardson is a freak of nature. When you look at him physically, I mean, he's like Cam Newton. He's like 6'5" and 250 pounds. And Cam Newton was also a dart thrower. He wasn't a passer. He threw darts, right? He threw the football hard. That's kind of how I view Anthony Richardson. But for as much as Chris Ballard said, well, yeah, and Anthony is kind of taking it all in stride and says, yeah, I know, I got to get to work. Let me ask you this. How many of you listening to me right now across America or around the world on an internet connection on the Odyssey app, right? How many of you have kids? And I mentioned a little bit earlier in today's show, I got 2 stepkids. One's 22 and one's 20. And I can hear my oldest one. If I were getting on him a little bit, I could hear my oldest one just being like, yeah, I know. Yeah, I gotta put in the work. I know I gotta buckle down, I gotta put in the work. Has Anthony Richardson been putting in the work the last 2 years in terms of getting himself better, being a quarterback? And he, Richardson, to me, is an example of when you draft the athletic quarterback, you got to know there's the work ethic there to get better on the details, because the athletic quarterbacks will at times rely on their athleticism and will make bad throws and will make throws either off schedule or sidearm or something like that, because the athleticism at times can overtake some of the fundamentals that quarterbacks need to play with, right? So I don't know if I look at Anthony Richardson and think, okay, he's a 22-year-old just kind of being like, yes, Dad, yes, okay, fine, I hear you. I know I got to go to work. Or is it really, I'm going to go to work, I'm going to get better. Maybe even lean out a little bit. Maybe lose 10 pounds if you're Anthony Richardson. Get a little lighter on your feet. Get a little more mobile. But make sure you're working on those kind of skills. Chris Ballard might have stepped in it. Then again, if Anthony Richardson flames out and the Colts end up winning 7 or 8 or 9 games and not making the playoffs, Ballard's probably likely to be done at the end of the year anyway. 855-212-4227. 855-212-4227. Mike, I know that you've been keeping track, or at least keeping an eye on some of the stuff coming out of the combine, and is it true that we have breakdown to the big fight between the sports writer nerds at a Starbucks?
Apparently so. We got the tail of the tape. Rappaport coming in at about 5'5", 140 versus Jordan Schultz at 6 foot 205.
What?
Yeah, something along those lines. And it appears that Mr. Starbucks himself at a Starbucks had some interesting words, and Mr. Rappaport joined our buddy Pat McAfee and kind of detail what's going on.
All right.
Last night when it all broke, everyone in the world texted me wanting to know details, and it was all out there. Florio basically wrote the whole thing, so there's not much to add.
Wow.
And then I woke up this morning, and everyone in the world has texted me.
Yeah. What is next? Are you guys going to shake hands before you get out of town, or what do we think?
I mean,
That's a no. Wants to see him anymore. Hard pass on the handshake.
My role in this,
he's going to the coffee bean and tea leaf from now on.
Not another penny.
There's actually a lot of great coffee brands at Dunkin'.
Hey, we're happy you're okay. We love you. Are you all right, man? You're going to be okay?
I'm okay.
Oh, that's fantastic. The pivot to Dunkin' there, Mike, is a class move. That's the way to stick it. Yeah,
that's brilliant. I mean, listen, I don't think Starbucks is really all too worried about it. They're doing okay, I think, at this point.
Yeah, they've completely hoodwinked people into completely overpaying a massive amount of money to be able to get their various products. And yeah, for those who don't know, Jordan Schultz, who is an NFL insider for Fox, I don't think I've ever seen him on TV over there. I guess he's writing, if they still have people writing at foxsports.com. I know they punted that about 6 or 7 years ago. But yeah, this guy, Jordan Schultz, his dad started Starbucks. So in reality, kid doesn't have to do nothing. He's out there covering the NFL and beefing with Ian Rappaport of the NFL Network. Knowing a little bit of what I do about both guys, and one of my better friends in the business is one of the best NFL kind of beat guys. One of those insiders. I think there might be some people that were rooting for Jordan Schultz in that situation, and I'll leave it at that. Mike, anything else stand out that you've put together over today's really the D-line group, I think, is the group that's out there doing shorts and shirts and running around a little bit. I've seen some of those numbers pop up. But anything else newsworthy that has crossed your executive producer desk?
Yeah, so far kind of boring on the actual workouts. Mason Graham, who's the top defensive tackle available, he's only going to do the bench press, which they haven't done yet. The top player that we've seen do any kind of activity is James Pierce. He's CBS's 10th ranked prospect overall and 3rd overall defensive end or edge rusher from Tennessee. He got an awful result in the vertical jump. He was 30th in the vertical jump with just a 31-inch vertical jump. Now, I don't know how much that matters for a defensive end when you're trying to get to a quarterback, but that's not a good start for him. And we haven't really seen much else from some of these top players. Ty Robinson out of Nebraska leads the way with a 4.8340 so far among this group, but we haven't seen a lot of the big boys go quite yet.
I love watching the Largos run. I don't know why it tickles me. Everything from Aaron Donald to the guy who's Twig and Giggleberries flopped out of his shorts a couple years ago. That's always an interesting one that people tend to bring back a little bit. I don't know if our very own Rich Eisen here on the Infinity Sports Network has talked about his Run Rich Run, where he's likely to pull a hamstring running a 40-yard dash, and everybody kind of chuckling once again. We're starting to get some of these defensive linemen. I'm looking at some of the graphics right now, like Derek Harmon of Oregon, comparing him measurement-wise to a guy like Chris Jones in Kansas City. We'll start to get a lot of those kind of, I like to call them the Hindu theories, the guys that are, the guys that you would compare them to in the league. Not that they would be that productive, but at least from a height, strength, weight standpoint, all that kind of stuff. 855-212-4227. I want to bring it home and get Mike and Stu and you all in at 855-212-4227 for a little group discussion on the upcoming NCAA tournament, right? And I'll mention this here so you can think about it and mull it over. What defines success for a big-time college basketball conference? And the reason I bring this up is because it looks like the SEC might set a new NCAA tournament record for teams from a conference getting into the now field of 68. But what does that really mean? Yeah, you got a lot of teams in, but how do you then define what is success? Is it just having the one team left standing at the end to win the national championship? Is it overall wins? Is it getting the most teams to a Final Four? I admit I'm really struggling with this. So I kind of turn to you, America, at 855-212-4227. I'll get Mike and Stu in here on all this. But when you think about one conference getting that many teams, how do I then define success for that conference? Is it literally just, well, you're the last team standing, but that's not necessarily indicative of how great your conference is or isn't. So we'll get to all that, but the one thing we never question is the amazingness, the greatness of our friend, Rich Ackerman.
Infinity Sports Network, Sports Flash.
Someone's following my line of thinking. Heisman Trophy winner Travis Hunter, speaking of greatness, drew quite a crowd today at the Scouting Combine. The multi-dimensional Colorado star is the most unique talent to be in the draft in years, and he is ready for the grind of the NFL.
I didn't have no load management at Colorado. Coach Farmer pretty much let me do what I felt was right for my body. I'm the only person that knew what's right for my body, so I did a lot of treatment, a lot of training. I always woke up early to get to where I needed to be.
Another top prospect, Abdul does not need surgery on his injured foot and will take part in Penn State's Pro Day next month. The star pass rusher already played through a shoulder injury in the college football playoff. The Chiefs need to upgrade their offensive line, and it starts with their best player, as they're going to use the franchise tag on guard Trey Smith with the intention of working out a long-term deal. His salary for next year will be just over $23 million, and the salary cap officially going to be over $279 million next year. As March approaches, there are several contenders in the NBA. The defending champs are one of them. The former champ is emerging as well. Denver has won 10 of 11 and continues its road trip tonight in Milwaukee. I'm Rich Ecker.
The Infinity Sports Network is on your smart speaker. All you have to say is play Infinity Sports Network.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Five seconds remaining. 30 seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Hey, this is Howie. And this is Nick from the Backstreet Boys. And you're listening to the Zach Gelb Show. And guess what? Zach is back. All right.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show.
Oh my God, we're back again.
Stu, I actually turned my headphones down for part of that. I'm just saying. It's like 2 days in a row now that I've had something to say about it. And this second one, I got my little board here. I just potted down for the real cringe part so I don't, seize up. I'm I played college football. I got bad back and stuff. Last thing I need to do is cringe because of that and lock myself up for 3 days. That would not be good. We know that a lot of college basketball teams are looking to lock in their spots to the field of 68 and make the NCAA tournament. And, when you look around, there are two real big conferences that feel like they've got a chance to make some significant noise because of the depths of their league in this tournament. And one would be the Big Ten and one would be the SEC. It sounds familiar, right? Kind of heard the same thing about SEC or Big Ten when it came to the college football playoff. And I know that there will be a lot of people in the Big 12 who will be like, hey, you big dummy, how come you didn't mention our league? Because, we got Houston, and even though they're, I think, ranked 21st, Arizona's still in there. We know they have a lot of championship credibility over the years, but a lot of people are smarting on the SEC. One, because the SEC basketball conference has finally arrived. If you really think about it, what has the SEC been built on? All football. And yeah, there will be some individual standout athletes who will come along in certain sports and be stars in different ways. Hi, Livy Dunn. But when you think of SEC, you really think of football first. And now they can allow themselves to start to think and dream that maybe, just maybe, because of all the resources and all the money and just the blue blood programs that are up and down the SEC, that there's going to be one or two of them that are going to break through, maybe get to a Final Four, and dare we say, the way folks would call the Infinity Sports Network, saying something to the effect of, how come more SEC teams aren't in the college football playoff? How come this team got left out of the tournament, that team got left out of the tournament? So many SEC fans who are just like, well, hell, we don't care. It's normally our invitational. Not so much in the world of college basketball, but this year there's a chance. You have Auburn, you have Alabama, you have Tennessee that's playing great. Hell, even Kentucky's a top 25 team. You look at them, they might not compete for a national championship, but they can make a run and get to a second weekend in the NCAA tournament. And when you look by history, the Big East in, I do believe it was 2010, 2011, had 11 teams get into the tournament that year. And it was UConn, if I'm not mistaken, the last team standing in winning that national championship, right? So I bring in Mike and Stu for a little bit of a NCAA tournament discussion because, guys, I think we have to ask the question for now a conference that is, I think the SEC is getting 13 in the NCAA tournament. So what defines success for a conference? most teams in the Final Four, most teams or most wins in an NCAA tournament, be the last team standing to win the national championship? Hell, I don't know. You guys are much younger than me. Maybe this stuff is all overrated to some. But, like, Mike, how do we figure out, or how do we kind of put the qualifier on, if this happens, it was a successful NCAA tournament run for the SEC or any conference that gets like double-digit teams into the tournament?
So I think it's tough because the tournament, it's one and done, and there's just so many upsets and so many different things that can happen at any moment that it's hard to judge a conference based off of a good or bad run in the tournament and throw away what the conference did during the regular season. Like, and unlike in college football and college basketball, all these teams play each other, right? The SEC plays the Big Ten and the ACC and the Big 12. They all play each other. So there's at least some level of ventilation. Whereas in football, college football, you don't really know what conferences are better because oftentimes they're just beating each other up and not playing against a lot of these other big time programs. So I always, if a conference gets in 13 teams, to me, that's success, right? That says that we were the best conference. We beat all the teams throughout the season, in our conference, out of our conference. That's a huge indicator of success. Now, if of those 13 teams, 3 of them get to the Sweet 16, that's a problem, right? You don't need to get 10 of those, into the Sweet 16, but you have to get at least like 30 or 40%, and you can't have a ton of one and dones. You can't have a ton of your teams getting knocked out, 14s beating 3s and 15s beating 2s. Like, you have to at least have a respectable showing. So I think the regular season is the biggest indicator, and then after that, because of the uncertainty of the tournament, I kind of give a little bit more leeway, but you can't lay an egg.
So it's interesting that you bring up the one and dones, right? Because I'm looking at the bracketology breakdown right now, and it's projected the SEC will get 13 teams in, the Big Ten will get 10, and then the Big 12 will get 8 teams in the tournament. Big East is a little top-heavy this year. The projection is they'll only get in 4. The ACC will only get 4. And I think that's important what you mentioned there, Mike, of the teams that would go one and done. Right, because if we get through the first 2 days of the NCAA tournament and the Big East still has, say, 3 of their 4 in there, and the SEC has 6 of their 13 that get bounced in the first game, whether it's upsets or they cannibalize each other, whatever in the world it is, or out maybe on that first weekend, then I think we will look at that pretty harshly. Like, I feel like if the SEC, if they get in 13 and 6 are remaining after the first weekend, then that's very different than getting popped in the first round and getting upset in a 4-13 or something to that effect. And then you have the Big Ten, who's going to get 10 teams in, and we know the success that they've had the last couple of years. And I guess I kind of feel the same. If they get in 10 and 5 are still standing, then that feels acceptable. And Mike, that whole like losing in the first round has really like resonated with me because, in the words of the great John Sterling, how ignominious it would be for like teams of that stature to then hop into the first round of the NCAA tournament and lose to a team from the ACC or lose to a Big East team. It's looking like UConn is going to be a number 9 seed, right? And I only bring them up because I was hooting at Dan Hurley a little bit earlier. But if they're a 9 seed, right? I'm looking at some of the teams that could be 8 seeds. So you got Illinois out of the Big Ten, right? You had BYU out of the Big 12 as I'm looking at these brackets. But I'm looking at the 7 seeds, right? So if you're in 7, 8, 9, you're sort of hanging around that neighborhood of you can end up getting a UConn. Let's say UConn slides all the way to a 10. And they're matched up in a 7-10 against Ole Miss or a 7-10 against Mississippi State, right? That's where it could be like, oh, okay, you're going against a college basketball blue blood who has championship credibility, and we realize that maybe your maybe the record and sort of the public perception of the team has been kind of pumped up because you played in the SEC, and a lot of people talked about how great that league was going to be all year long. I think as I'm thinking about it here and kind of workshopping it, two things come to mind. Don't lose a bunch of teams in their first game. First weekend, fine. Don't lose the first game. And if the SEC gets, I'm going to say, a couple of number one seeds, I don't know if it would work out that way. Right now, the bracketology says Auburn, Duke, well, Florida and Alabama, actually. There we go. So if the SEC gets 3 number one seeds and 2 of them don't make the Final Four, I think that would very much get held against the SEC. Might be a little unfair, but if 3 of your teams are number one seeds, I got to expect that bare minimum 1 of them is going to get there, and then really 2 of them should get there. Well, there's a lot of pressure on the SEC in this NCAA tournament because it is very evident and very clear that they know they have the resources to kind of take over. They just haven't done it completely yet. But if you're the SEC, you need that extra stamp of basketball credibility because there are a lot of people who can still look at whatever name brands are left in the Big 12 and then, of course, the Big 10, who is, to me, right there in terms of competing in the SEC and pretty much all sports across the board. We know that the Big 10 has had success. We know that they've got good teams. We know that they're now a league is bigger than the SEC, so they're drawing from a wider pool of candidates. You throw UCLA in there, you don't think about the Big 10, but now that's going to go on their resume. So you got these other conferences that are definitely, hell, if you're the Big East, you get 4 teams in and 1 goes to the Final Four, you got to feel pretty good about yourself. But if you're the SEC and you get 13 teams in, 3 number one seeds, and only 1 is standing in the Final Four, you might not feel so great about that. I am excited for conference tournament play. I am excited for the NCAA tournament. I admit I'm trying to get there in terms of catching up on everything that I want to catch up on. But my gut feel tells me people have overrated the SEC. And that we're going to find out in the NCAA tournament that the middle to the bottom of those SEC teams that are going to make the NCAA tournament, they're going to be disappointing. If I were to push the chips to the center of the table right now, just on gut feel, reading a little bit, and just the way it kind of goes with the NCAA tournament, haven't seen it for years and years and years, I feel like when we're done with it, we're going to be talking about, that first Monday in April or the first Monday, right out, or actually really the Monday of the national championship game. And there'll be a lot of talk of how the SEC kind of disappointed. Apparently Travis Kelce is coming back to the NFL in 2025. He told Pat McAfee can't go out like that. So we will see Taylor Swift again for another year around the NFL. Great job by Mike and Stu shepherding me through the last 2 days. JR Sports Brief is up next. I'm Gresh, and I'll talk to you this weekend on the Infinity Sports Network.
You're in a 5-minute break.